In a city that never sleeps, where money speaks louder than hearts, Angela Roberts had it all. The mansion, the cars, the kind of life people only dream about. To the world, she was the woman who could buy anything, and she believed it too. But behind her tall mansion gate stood a man she barely noticed, a quiet security guard who watched the world through patience, not pride. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but his heart carried something her money never could. Life has a way of humbling even the strongest, and when heartbreak came knocking, the same gate she built to keep people out became the place where love found its way in. The city of Lagos glittered that morning under the sun. Cars honked, people hurried, and somewhere in Ikoyi, a mansion stood taller than pride itself. Inside lived Angela Roberts, a billionaire who seemed to have everything except peace. Angela wasn't born rich, but she had built her empire brick by brick. She owned one of the biggest real estate firms in Lagos and walked with a confidence that turned heads. Her words were sharp, her suits sharper. Yet beneath her perfect lipstick smile was a woman who had forgotten what it meant to be truly loved. That morning, her assistant rushed in. "Ma, the new security guy just resumed today." Angela barely looked up from her tablet. "Good. Just make sure he doesn't sleep on duty like the last one." Outside, Michael Adams, the new security guard, stood at the gate, nervous but steady. His uniform was clean but old. He adjusted his ID tag, whispering to himself, "It's just a job. Be grateful." He had graduated with honors years ago, but life hadn't been kind. Jobs were scarce, and when his mother fell ill, he had to accept any work that came. So, here he was, guarding the home of a woman who could afford what he could only dream of. When Angela's black Range Rover approached the gate, Michael stood straight, greeting her politely. She glanced at him, just a second, and turned her face away as the gate opened. That moment set the tone of their worlds, one looking down, the other looking up. Days passed. Angela was as cold as the marble floors in her mansion. Michael noticed her routine: early meetings, late returns, no visitors except business partners, and sometimes men in fine suits who left arguing. One evening, she came back from a dinner looking tired and angry. The man she was dating, a popular entrepreneur, had embarrassed her in public by flirting with another woman. Michael, standing by the gate, quietly opened it. She stormed past him, but he saw it, the sadness in her eyes hidden behind expensive sunglasses. "Good night, Ma," he said softly. She didn't reply. But that night, for the first time, she couldn't sleep. His simple greeting echoed in her mind. It had sounded genuine, something she hadn't heard in a long time. A week later, Angela came home crying. Her engagement had just ended. Another heartbreak. Another man who wanted her money more than her heart. She parked and sat in the car, trying to hide her tears. Michael approached carefully. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked. Angela looked up sharply. "Do I look all right to you?" He said nothing, just nodded respectfully and handed her a tissue from his pocket. She took it, surprised. "Thank you," she whispered, before walking away. That night, she stood by her balcony, watching Michael below, greeting guests with quiet dignity. She realized he never complained, never gossiped, never asked for favors. It was strange, but comforting. Sometimes, the richest people are the loneliest. And sometimes, comfort comes from the most unexpected hands. One evening, as rain poured and thunder cracked the Lagos sky, Angela's car broke down on 3rd Mainland Bridge. Her phone was dead, traffic was mad, and fear crept in. Out of nowhere, a familiar voice called, "Madam Angela?" She turned, and there was Michael, drenched but smiling, walking toward her with an umbrella. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to change how a person is seen forever. The rain in Lagos didn't fall that night. It roared, the kind of rain that made drivers park under bridges and streetlights flicker like dying candles. Angela's black SUV rolled slowly through the flooded street, wipers fighting a losing battle. Her phone battery blinked red, then went off completely. "Not tonight," she muttered. She had just left an event where her ex, Richard, had embarrassed her in front of investors. He'd called her emotionless before everyone. Now, stranded on Third Mainland Bridge, her car engine coughed and died. Angela hit the steering wheel. Seriously? She stepped out into the storm, heels sinking into water. Cars sped past, splashing her without care. For the first time in a long while, she felt small, helpless. Then she heard a voice behind her. "Madam Angela?" She turned. Standing in the rain, soaked to the bone, was Michael Adeyemi, holding an umbrella. "Sir, what are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. "I was heading home from the company's other property," he said, shouting above the rain. "Saw your car by chance." "Let me help." Angela hesitated. She wasn't used to being helped, especially not by him. But the rain was merciless. Michael took off his jacket and covered her shoulders. "You'll catch cold, Ma." Something inside her softened. No one had said words like that to her in years. He opened the car's bonnet, fixed a loose cable, and got the engine started. When she offered to drop him home, he refused politely. "Don't worry, Ma. I'll get a bus from here." But she insisted. "Get in." As they drove through the dripping city, silence filled the car, comfortable for once. Angela stole glances at him. The man she'd barely noticed now sat quietly, raindrops on his face, hands folded respectfully. "You studied engineering, right?" she asked suddenly. He looked surprised. "Yes, Ma." "Mechanical engineering from Unilag. Then what are you doing as a gate man?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes life teaches us humility before it rewards us." Her chest tightened. Those words hit deeper than she expected. When they arrived at her mansion, she told him to wait while she got his fare. Michael shook his head. "No need, Ma. I'm just glad you got home safe." Angela watched him walk away into the rain, disappearing behind the gate. Something strange stirred in her heart, something she couldn't name. The next morning, she couldn't stop thinking about him. During her meeting, his words echoed in her mind. Life teaches us humility before it rewards us. That afternoon, her assistant burst in. "Ma, there was an attempted break-in last night at the back fence. The alarm system failed, but the new security guy handled it." Angela frowned. "Michael?" "Yes, Ma. He caught one of the men before they could escape. Police took over." She stood up immediately. "Where is he now?" "In the security post." He refused medical treatment. Angela walked out without her shoes, something she had never done. When she saw him, arm bruised, uniform wet from last night, something inside her broke. "You could have been hurt," she said softly. Michael smiled. "That's my job, Ma." "To protect?" She shook her head. "You went beyond your job." For the first time, Angela felt something she hadn't in years. Gratitude mixed with admiration. The man she once looked down on had done what many of her wealthy friends would never do: risk himself for her without expecting anything in return. That night, Angela couldn't sleep. Her room felt too quiet. She stood by the window, watching the light at the security post where Michael sat reading a worn-out book. In her heart, a quiet voice whispered, "Maybe not all men are the same. True worth is not in titles, but in the heart that serves with sincerity." A few days later, Angela's company made the front page of a business magazine, right next to a shocking headline: "Billionaire Angela Roberts betrayed by ex-fiancé in new real estate scam." As she stared at the paper in disbelief, Michael walked into the compound, unaware that this scandal would draw them even closer and change everything again. Pride builds walls so high that even kindness has to knock twice before being let in. Angela tried to focus on work that morning, but her mind kept drifting to Michael. Every time she remembered him standing in the rain, helping her without complaint, her chest tightened. He didn't just fix her car, he had cracked something inside her that success could never mend. The newspaper scandal about her ex-fiancé Richard only made it worse. The story was everywhere. Billionaire's lover uses her company name in fake deal. Investors whispered. Staff avoided her eyes. For once, Angela felt small in the company she built. Michael, on the other hand, kept doing his duty like nothing had changed. He greeted everyone with quiet respect, opened the gate with calm hands, and never looked for her attention. That calmness irritated her, then humbled her. One afternoon, she found herself standing by the balcony, watching him again. He was helping the gardener lift bags of sand, sweat glistening on his forehead. Her assistant, Grace, appeared beside her. "Ma, people are talking," Grace said carefully. "About what?" Angela asked, not moving her eyes. "They say you're giving too much attention to the security man." Angela turned sharply. "Do I ask them who they talk to at night? Let them mind their business." Grace blinked, shocked at her tone. Angela rarely defended anyone, especially a staff member. Later that evening, she called Michael through the intercom. "Come to the main house. I need help with the backup generator." When he entered the mansion, he looked uneasy, his uniform slightly stained with oil. The grandeur of the house made him look out of place, yet something about his quiet confidence filled the room. "The generator's been acting up," Angela said. "Everyone else is gone." He nodded, inspected the switches, and fixed the issue within minutes. "You studied engineering," she murmured. "You really shouldn't be doing this kind of job." He smiled faintly. "Ma, sometimes a small door leads to a big destiny. I'm just walking through the one that opened." She stared at him, her usual arrogance melting. There was truth in his simplicity that cut deeper than any boardroom advice she'd ever receive. A silence settled between them, soft but charged. Angela felt safe for the first time in a long while, though she couldn't explain why. "Can I ask something, Ma?" Michael said quietly. "Yes. Why do you look sad even when everything around you is perfect?" Angela froze. No one had ever dared to ask her that. Not her friends, not her lovers, not even her mother. She tried to laugh it off. "I'm not sad." He looked at her gently. "Then maybe you're just tired of pretending." That sentence hit her like a heartbeat she didn't know she missed. That night, Angela lay awake, replaying his words. Tired of pretending. Maybe he was right. She had spent years building walls around herself, walls of pride, wealth, and control. But every wall she built kept love farther away. The next morning, she greeted her staff differently, softer. She even thanked the cook, something she'd never done. Michael noticed, but said nothing. Change begins the moment we allow humility to touch our pride. A few days later, as Angela's company began recovering from the scandal, she received an unexpected visitor, Richard, her ex-fiancé. He stood at her gate, holding flowers and wearing gilt like a designer suit. "Angela," he said through the intercom, "I made a mistake. Please, just hear me out." Michael looked at him coldly, then turned toward the mansion. Inside, Angela heard the voice that once broke her heart. And as she walked toward the door, she realized her walls weren't the only ones about to fall. Angela had always believed the world ran on class and control. People stayed in their places, and the rich never mixed with the poor, until life started rewriting her rules, one encounter at a time. That morning, the Lagos sun painted the mansion gates gold. Michael stood by the post, crisp in his uniform, scanning vehicles like always. But something about his calm spirit made the noise of the city fade. Angela walked past him with her usual poise, her heels tapping against the marble walkway. But for the first time, she stopped. "Good morning, Michael," she said, her voice soft, uncertain. Michael turned, surprised. "Good morning, Ma." His reply was respectful, his smile small but genuine. She didn't know why she'd greeted him. Maybe it was the loneliness that came after too many heartbreaks. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes, something she hadn't seen in any man wearing a suit. Later that day, her driver called in sick, and she had to attend a crucial board meeting. With frustration bubbling inside, she stormed out to the gate. "Michael, do you drive?" she asked sharply. "Yes, Ma." "I do," he answered, unsure of where this was going. "Get the keys," she ordered. "You'll drive me today?" The ride through Victoria Island was silent at first, filled with the hum of traffic and her phone buzzing with messages from investors and friends she no longer trusted. But as they crossed Third Mainland Bridge, something shifted. Angela caught a glimpse of Michael's face in the mirror, calm, confident, focused. "You drive like someone who's done this before," she said, testing him. "I used to drive for a logistics firm," he replied, "before they downsized. I lost the job, and the rent followed." He smiled faintly. "This was what I found next." Angela didn't reply, but her heart softened a little. When they arrived at the meeting, she asked him to wait outside. Hours later, she returned, angry and embarrassed. The board had rejected her new project, calling it too emotional. They said business wasn't about feelings. Inside the car, she sat quietly, lost in thought. Michael started the engine, but said nothing. "You don't think emotions ruin business, do you?" she asked suddenly. He glanced at her through the mirror. "No, Ma. Emotions are what make us human. Without them, business would just be numbers, and people would just be tools." Angela stared at him, realizing he'd just said something her expensive mentors never could. She didn't reply, but for the first time, she smiled faintly. Over the next few days, Angela found herself looking forward to their brief conversations. He talked about life like it was more than survival, about dignity, gratitude, and second chances. She began asking him about his studies, his dreams. "I studied economics," he told her one evening as they watched the rain pour over the compound. "I was supposed to work in finance. But when you don't have connections, degrees don't open doors." Angela turned to him, her voice softer. "You never told me you were a graduate. You never asked," he replied gently. That night, she lay in bed, replaying his words. It wasn't arrogance, it was truth. She'd looked at him for months, but never seen him. The next morning, she made an unexpected decision. She gave Michael a day off and asked him to come in the next day dressed in casual clothes, not his uniform. The staff whispered, confused. When he arrived, she handed him a tablet. "I'm starting a foundation for underprivileged graduates," she said, "and I need someone who understands what it feels like to wait for opportunity." Michael stared at her, speechless. "Ma, are you sure?" "Yes," she said simply. "You'll be my assistant for the project. You deserve more than that gate." But as his face brightened, a black car pulled up outside. Angela froze. Out stepped Richard, her ex, dressed sharp as always, holding a bouquet. "Angela," he said smoothly, walking toward her, "I made a mistake. Let's talk." Michael stepped back respectfully, lowering his eyes. The old pain flickered in Angela's chest, the same pain that had taught her not to trust. But something was different now. "Richard," she said quietly, "you came too late." His smile faded. "You're choosing a security guard over me?" Michael looked up, hurt in his eyes. He started to walk away, but Angela turned sharply. "No, Richard. I'm choosing peace over pride." The moment hung heavy. Richard's smirk vanished, replaced by disbelief. He dropped the flowers, muttered under his breath, and stormed off. Michael stood frozen, unsure whether to speak. Angela took a slow breath. "You can start work tomorrow," she said softly. He nodded. "Thank you, Ma." As he walked away, Angela watched him, her heart strangely light. The world outside her mansion hadn't changed, but she had. For the first time, she realized love didn't always arrive in fine suits or fast cars. Sometimes it waited quietly. Angela was finally learning peace again. The mansion felt lighter, her mornings brighter. She'd begun to see value beyond luxury, especially in the man who guarded her gate with quiet wisdom. Michael had become more than an employee. He'd become her calm in a noisy world. But peace, as life would prove, never lasts untested. It started with a bouquet of red roses on her doorstep one Monday morning. No note, just the same brand she used to love. She ignored it, assuming it was a client's gift. But the next day, another bouquet came, followed by a text from a familiar number she had deleted months ago. "I still think about you, Angie. Let's talk, Richard." Her chest tightened. The man who had broken her trust, who left her in the middle of her lowest moment, now wanted to talk. She told herself she was over him, but curiosity, the dangerous kind, lingered. Michael noticed her mood shift. "You seem distant, Ma," he said one evening as she stepped out of her car. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, Michael, everything's fine," she replied too quickly. He didn't push, but the concern in his eyes said more than words. A few days later, Richard showed up at her office building, dressed in a fine suit, wearing that same charming smile that once made her weak. He waited by her car after a board meeting, holding flowers again. "Angela," he said softly, "you look amazing. I know I hurt you, but I'm not the same man." His voice carried sincerity or something that sounded like it. Angela hesitated, torn between old pain and new confusion. "Richard, I've moved on. Please don't make this harder." "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, stepping closer. "Just coffee, one last talk." She should have walked away. Michael's warning echoed in her mind. "Be careful who you let back into your peace." But she silenced it. Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet Richard the next day. That meeting was the first step back into chaos. Richard spoke sweetly, apologized, and told stories of regret. He said he missed her laughter, her strength, and the empire they could still build together. It was everything she once dreamed of hearing. For a moment, she felt seen again, but Michael noticed her change, the late nights, the sudden smiles at her phone. One evening, he gathered the courage to speak. "Ma, I know it's not my place," he said quietly, "but people like Richard don't change overnight. Some lessons. They come back wearing flowers." Angela frowned. "You're overstepping, Michael." "I'm sorry," he said, lowering his gaze. "I just don't want to see you hurt again." Her tone softened, but her pride held her back. "Thank you, Michael. But I can handle myself." Days turned into weeks, and Angela let Richard closer. He brought business ideas and promises of partnership. Her board members seemed impressed. The media began whispering about their rekindled bond. For the first time in months, she felt powerful again, until it all fell apart. One Friday morning, the city woke up to a headline splashed across social media. Billionaire Angela Roberts caught in company scandal, ex-lover. Allegedly, leaks confidential files. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the news. Richard had used their renewed closeness to access private documents, selling details about her upcoming project to a rival company. Her investors panicked. Reporters camped outside her gate. She felt the world closing in again. As she sat in her office, face buried in her palms, Michael quietly entered with a brown envelope. "Ma," he said softly, "I think you should see this." Inside were printed screenshots, proof that Michael had traced the leak and reported it to cybersecurity contacts he still had from his university days. The rival company had already taken down the stolen proposal. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I only did what anyone loyal would do," he replied simply. Angela looked up at him, eyes filled with regret and gratitude. "No, Michael. You did what someone who cares would do." That night, she sat alone on her balcony, Lagos lights flickering below, thinking about the irony of it all. The man she'd once loved destroyed her, and the man she'd once looked down on protected her. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of pain. They were of awakening. Michael had gone home for the night, but his words still lingered. "Be careful who you let back into your peace." Angela finally understood. Some lessons don't sink in the first time. They break you twice just to make you whole once. And as she watched the moon rise over her mansion, she whispered to herself, "Never again." But fate was not done teaching her. The storm was only beginning. After the scandal faded, Angela's name began to recover, but not her peace. The internet moved on, but whispers remained, soft and sharp, like paper cuts. People couldn't stop talking about how her security man had been the one to save her reputation. At first, Angela didn't notice the shift. She went about her routines, attending meetings, hosting investors, and focusing on rebuilding trust. Michael still stood faithfully at the gate, only now his presence carried a quiet respect. Staff who once ignored him now greeted him carefully. Some even smiled, out of politeness, not sincerity. Then came the rumors. It started with her secretary, Grace, whispering to a co-worker when Angela entered the office one morning. The conversation stopped instantly, but Angela had heard her name followed by Michael's. Later that day, the chef mentioned he'd seen them having dinner together in the garden, which wasn't true. But gossip never needs truth to grow. Within days, stories spread like Lagos Hamatan fire. "She's dating the security man. They say he spends nights inside the mansion." She promoted him for reasons we all know. The same people who once called her Madam of Grace Holdings now muttered behind her back. Angela ignored it, pretending not to care. But at night, when she sat alone in her quiet living room, their words echoed louder than silence. One evening, she walked into the staff quarters unannounced and found two junior workers whispering. The moment they saw her, their eyes widened in fear. "Madam, we didn't know you were—" She raised a hand. "It's fine. I don't need your apologies. I just want you to remember that gossip ruins people faster than lies." Her voice was calm, but her heart burned. The next morning, Michael noticed her tension. "Is everything okay, Martin?" he asked as he opened her car door. She hesitated, then sighed. "People are talking again. About us." He looked uncomfortable. "I've heard some things too. Should I address it?" "No," she said quickly. "I don't want you dragged into this." But the pressure kept building. Investors began asking questions. Her mother called from Ikoi, her tone sharp. "Angela, have you completely lost sense of class? Why is the internet filled with stories about you and a gatekeeper?" "He's not just a gatekeeper, Mum," Angela replied quietly. "Then what is he?" her mother snapped. "You're making a mockery of your name." Angela ended the call before tears could betray her. Days later, her board of directors requested a private meeting. She entered the conference room and immediately felt the chill in the air. One of the older directors cleared his throat. "Madam, we have great respect for you, but this talk about your relationship with the security man, it's hurting the company's image. The staff morale is low. People are laughing at us." Angela stared at the faces around her, men and women who once cheered for her brilliance, now judging her for being human. "What exactly are you suggesting?" she asked. Another voice said it plainly: "Fire him. For the sake of your reputation." For a moment, no one breathed. Angela leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat loud in her chest. Fire the man who had stood by her when the world mocked her? The man who saved her name without asking for anything in return? She stood slowly. "I built this company from scratch," she said, her voice calm but firm. "And I did it by standing for what's right, not what's popular. I will not fire an innocent man because society can't handle decency." Her words dropped like stones in the room. No one replied. That evening, she called Michael to her office. He stood by the door, uncertain. "Michael," she began softly, "I need to make something official." He frowned. "Ma," she took a breath. "From today, you're not just a security guard. You're my personal security officer, reporting directly to me." He blinked, shocked. "Ma, that's not necessary. I don't want to cause more trouble for you." Angela smiled faintly. "You already protect me, Michael. It's time everyone sees it for what it is." The next morning, the staff watched as Michael arrived wearing a new uniform, tailored and crisp, with a badge that read, "Personal Security Officer." The gossipers fell silent. Some bowed their heads, others turned away, embarrassed. Angela passed through the hallway with quiet pride. The whispers that once stung her now carried no weight, because in that moment she realized society will always talk, but courage speaks louder. And though the storm wasn't over, something had changed inside her. For the first time, Angela didn't care who misunderstood her. She was finally learning that true dignity isn't in the opinions of others, it's in the choices you refuse to regret. But deep inside, she also knew something else. When you rise above the crowd, you become a bigger target. And after the storm of rumors and judgment, Angela's mansion grew quieter. The noise from outside no longer reached her heart. She had learned to stop explaining herself, and that silence was often the loudest form of strength. Michael's promotion had changed everything. He now worked closely with Angela, escorting her to meetings, reviewing security reports, and handling situations she'd once ignored. He wasn't just a guard anymore. He was someone she could trust. Someone whose calm presence made even her most stressful days feel lighter. They started having breakfast together sometimes, not as employer and employee, but as two people trying to understand life from different ends of the same city. Michael spoke of his struggles, how he graduated with honors but couldn't find a job because he lacked connections, how his mother's health bills pushed him into taking the only work he could find. Angela listened quietly, realizing how much she'd once taken for granted. "You could have given up," she said one morning as they sat by the garden. He smiled faintly. "I almost did. But giving up doesn't feed the people who believe in you." That sentence lingered in her chest long after he'd gone back to his post. Days turned into weeks, and slowly something began to change. Angela found herself looking forward to his company, his advice, his laughter, the ease with which he made difficult moments feel simple. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was something stronger than pride. One evening, after a long board meeting, she found herself sitting beside him by the mansion's front gate. The air was cool, and Lagos traffic hummed softly in the distance. "Do you ever wish you were someone else?" she asked suddenly. Michael chuckled. "Every day. But then I remember, being myself is the only thing I'm good at." Angela laughed quietly. "You're wiser than most people I know." He shrugged. "Maybe because I've seen life from below. You learn fast. When no one expects you to stand tall." Their eyes met briefly, long enough to say what words couldn't. But peace never stays long when life wants to teach you more. The next morning, Angela's mother arrived at the mansion unannounced. Dressed in a royal blue lace gown and gold jewelry, she swept through the living room like a queen inspecting her throne. "Angela," she called sharply, "what is this I'm hearing about you eating with your security man?" Angela's chest tightened. "Mum, please don't start." Her mother's gaze hardened. "You're the talk of Lagos already. I raised you to lead, not to mingle with workers." "Mum, Michael isn't just a worker. He's educated, respectful." "Educated?" her mother scoffed. "Then why is he guarding your gate?" "Let's not pretend, Angela. Some people belong where they are." Angela bit her lip, anger flashing in her eyes. "That's the same thing people said about me when I started my company. They said a woman couldn't lead. Remember?" Her mother looked offended. "Don't compare yourself to him. You were born to rise. He was hired to protect you." Before Angela could respond, Michael walked into the room, unaware of the tension. He stopped short when he saw her mother. "Good afternoon, Ma," he greeted respectfully, bowing slightly. Her mother didn't respond. She just looked at him, like he was invisible. Angela's voice was soft but firm. "Mum, this is Michael." Her mother turned slowly to her. "I know who he is," she said coldly, "and I know where people like him should stand." Michael swallowed hard. "Ma, if I've done anything to offend you, I'm truly sorry." "You haven't offended me," she replied, still glaring, "but you're standing in a place that isn't meant for you." Silence filled the room. Angela looked at him helplessly, shame tightening her throat. Michael nodded quietly, his eyes gentle. "I understand." Then, without another word, he turned and left the mansion. Angela's heart cracked like glass. Her mother exhaled, satisfied. "Good. Now maybe you'll remember who you are." But as the heavy door closed behind Michael, Angela realized she didn't know who she was anymore. For the first time in her life, success didn't feel like power. It felt like emptiness. That night, she sat alone in her living room, staring at the empty chair where Michael usually sat for their late tea. His laughter still echoed faintly in her mind. Her phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Thank you for everything, Ma. I'll drop my resignation letter tomorrow morning. Please tell your mother she has nothing to worry about. Take care." Angela's eyes blurred with tears. She wanted to call him, to stop him, to say what her pride had been choking back for weeks, but she couldn't. And so, for the first time, the woman who had everything realized what it meant to lose the one thing money couldn't buy, peace of heart. The turning point had come. But love, like all precious, often arrives right after you've pushed it away. Michael's departure changed everything. The mansion, once filled with quiet laughter and morning tea, became a hollow shell of luxury. The gate that had once felt secure now stood like a symbol of distance between who Angela was and who she was becoming. Her mother stayed a few days longer, satisfied that order had been restored. But to Angela, it felt like peace had been stolen. Every morning, she found herself glancing through her bedroom window, expecting to see Michael at his post, standing tall, greeting her with his calm smile. Instead, a new guard stood there, one who saluted stiffly and looked away quickly. It didn't feel right. Her mother noticed her restlessness. "Angela," she said one afternoon over lunch, "you seem distracted." Angela looked up from her untouched meal. "I'm fine, Mum." Her mother smiled lightly. "Good, because I've arranged a dinner for you next week with the son of Chief Williams. He's just returned from London. A proper man for a woman of your status." Angela sighed. "Mum, please, not again." "Nonsense," her mother replied, her tone sharp. "You've spent enough time entertaining low company. It's time to rebuild your reputation." Angela didn't respond. There was no point arguing with someone who thought love could be measured by pedigree. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, she sat alone on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Without thinking, she opened her messages and reread Michael's last text. "Please tell your mother she has nothing to worry about. Take care." The simplicity of it broke her. She realized then that Michael had never once raised his voice at her, never made her feel small, even when she had treated him that way. He had protected her name, her dignity, and when insulted, he left quietly, with grace. Tears slid down her cheeks before she even knew they had fallen. A week later, she attended the dinner her mother arranged. The restaurant in Victoria Island was filled with Largo's elites, laughter, and the sound of clinking glasses. Chief William's son, Victor, was charming, well-dressed, well-spoken, and exactly the kind of man her mother adored. But as he talked about his travels, Angela's mind drifted. She thought of Michael's humble smile, his quiet strength, his gentle way of saying things that carried more meaning than 100 fancy words. "Angela?" Victor asked, snapping her out of her thoughts. "You're quiet." She forced a smile. "Just tired, that's all." When she got home, her mother was waiting eagerly in the living room. "So, how was he?" Angela exhaled. "Nice." "Nice," her mother frowned. "That's all you have to say?" "Mum, please," Angela said softly. "I don't want to talk about it." Her mother's voice turned cold. "You let a man with nothing walk away from you, and now you can't appreciate a man with everything? Angela, I didn't raise you for this kind of weakness." Angela looked up, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Maybe that's the problem, Mum. You raised me to chase perfection, not peace." Her mother froze. Angela stood slowly. "Michael might not have money or status, But he had something none of these men have: heart. Her mother's expression hardened. "Don't you dare say that name again in my house." "This is my house," Angela replied quietly. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the first time she had ever spoken back to her mother. That night, Angela walked through the mansion's hallways, memories of Michael everywhere, the laughter in the garden, his calm voice at the gate, the way he said, "Good morning, Ma," like it actually meant something. By the next morning, she couldn't take it anymore. She called his number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again. No answer. Her heart ached with every dial tone. Days passed. She tried to distract herself with work, meetings, charity events, but nothing filled the space he had left behind. Then one evening, her driver handed her an envelope. "Ma, this was dropped at the gate. From Mr. Michael." Her breath caught as she tore it open. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "Thank you for believing in me, even for a short time. I've found another job. Private security for a firm in IKEA. I'm doing fine. Please take care of yourself. You deserve happiness, Ma." Angela held the note close to her chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a billionaire. She felt like a woman who had lost something real. That night, she went to bed with her phone beside her, staring at his message. Somewhere in the city, Michael was probably standing guard again, calm, loyal, unseen. And Angela realized that love doesn't always announce itself with roses and riches. Sometimes, it comes in the quiet loyalty of someone who never asked for anything but the chance to care. But the hardest walls to break are the ones built by pride. And Angela was finally ready to start breaking hers. Angela woke up one morning with a strange silence pressing against her chest, the kind of silence that didn't come from peace, but from absence. Michael had been gone for almost 2 weeks, but it felt like months. His voice, his laughter, his calm presence, they still lingered like shadows in the corners of her mansion. Every place reminded her of him. The gate, the garden, the breakfast table. She tried to distract herself with work, but even her board noticed her distraction. During meetings, she drifted off mid-sentence, and her assistants whispered nervously whenever her mood changed. Lagos traffic roared outside her tinted windows, but inside, her heart was still. That afternoon, as her driver took her home, she saw something that made her sit up straight. A familiar figure in a black uniform, standing in front of a tall building in IKEA. "Stop the car," she said quickly. The driver pulled over. Angela stared through the glass. It was him, Michael, standing guard outside a private security firm. His posture, his calmness, it couldn't be anyone else. Her heart raced. She wanted to step out, to call his name, but her voice froze in her throat. What if he didn't want to see her? What if she had already hurt him beyond repair? She lowered her gaze, then whispered, "Drive on." That night, she couldn't sleep. The image of him standing there wouldn't leave her mind. The next morning, she did something she hadn't done in years. She went somewhere alone. No driver, no escort, no assistant. She drove herself to Acacia. The firm's name glimmered in gold letters: Guardian Elite Security Services. Michael stood near the gate, talking to a client. His uniform looked sharper now, his confidence stronger. He hadn't changed much, but something about him had. He looked freer. Angela stepped out of her car. The guards noticed her immediately. Her sleek car, her elegant dress, her quiet authority. "Good morning," she said gently. Michael turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, Time froze. "Ma?" he said quietly, almost in disbelief. Angela smiled nervously. "It's been a while, Michael." He nodded slowly. "Yes, Ma, it has." She took a small breath. "Can we talk?" He hesitated, then nodded. They sat at a small bench near the gate, reversing their old roles. This time, she was the visitor, and he was the one in uniform. "I read your note," she began softly. "I wanted to reply, but I didn't know what to say." Michael smiled faintly. "You didn't need to. I understood." She looked down. "I'm sorry, Michael, for everything. For the way my mother spoke to you, for how I looked down on you. You didn't deserve that." He shook his head. "It's okay, Ma. I didn't take it personally. People treat you based on how they see themselves, not how they see you." Angela's throat tightened. "I should have stood by you." "You did," he said simply. "You promoted me when no one else would have dared." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I let you walk away." He looked at her gently. "Maybe I needed to. Some things grow better when they're given space." Silence settled between them. The sounds of Lagos traffic and distant chatter filled the air. For the first time in a long while, Angela felt small, but not in a bad way. Small, in a way that reminded her she was human. "I came to ask something," she said finally. "Would you come work for me again?" He looked surprised. "As your security man?" She shook her head. "No, as something more. A manager. I want you to handle security operations for my entire company. You have the brains and the discipline. You've earned that chance." Michael stared at her, speechless. "Angela, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she whispered, smiling through her tears. "Please." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Ma. I'll do it." Angela's relief was instant. For the first time in months, she smiled from her heart. As they shook hands, she realized something powerful. Respect had replaced pride, and connection had replaced distance. That evening, as her car drove away, she looked back through the window and saw Michael watching her leave. Not as her guard this time, but as a man standing tall in his own worth. She knew this wasn't just a reunion. It was a beginning. Because sometimes love doesn't start when two hearts meet. It starts when one heart learns to kneel. And Angela had finally learned to kneel, not in weakness, but in grace. Angela didn't know what peace felt like until Michael walked into her office again. The air seemed lighter that morning, the way Lagos air feels after a heavy rain. Her staff watched in quiet surprise as the man once dismissed as a mere security guard now stood tall in a fitted suit, calm, confident, and composed. Michael had officially joined the company as security operations manager. The same man who used to open the gate now sat beside her in executive meetings, analyzing safety reports and offering insights that silenced entire rooms. Angela couldn't hide her pride, nor her admiration. Still, whispers filled the corridors. Some staff sneered behind polished smiles. Others looked confused, unsure how to treat him. But Michael never lost his grace. He greeted everyone with quiet respect, never once acting above anyone. One afternoon, Angela watched from her office as Michael helped a cleaner lift a heavy box. That simple act touched her. Power hadn't changed him. It had only revealed who he truly was. Later that evening, as the sun melted into the Lagos skyline, Angela invited him for dinner at her mansion. "Just to talk," she had said nervously. When Michael arrived, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black trousers, she realized how different he looked outside his uniform, calm but refined. The table was set beautifully, but the mood was soft and personal. "Thank you for coming," Angela began. He smiled gently. "Thank you for having me, Ma." "Please," she said, lowering her tone. "No, Ma, just Angela tonight." Michael nodded. "All right, Angela." They laughed softly. For a moment, it felt normal, too normal. As they ate, they spoke about life beyond money and power. Michael told her how he'd once dreamed of starting his own security company, but gave up after years of rejection. "I had the plans, the training, everything," he said quietly. "But without capital, dreams stay dreams." Angela listened closely. "And yet, you still found a way to stay kind." He looked up. "Kindness costs nothing. Pride, on the other hand, takes everything." Her eyes softened. That night, she realized something. She didn't just admire Michael. She respected him deeply. After dinner, they sat outside by the small garden. The air smelled of wet earth and blooming hibiscus. Angela broke the silence. "What if I told you your dream doesn't have to die?" she asked. Michael frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, turning to face him, "I want to invest in it. Your security company. You have the heart, the mind, and the discipline. I have the resources. Together, we could build something greater." Michael stared at her, speechless. "Angela, that's too much." "It's not charity," she interrupted softly. "It's partnership." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The world around them seemed to fade. The crickets, the city lights, the hum of distant cars, all gone. Just two people sitting under the same Lagos sky, bound by shared dreams and newfound trust. Michael finally smiled. "If this is real, I won't let you down." Angela smiled back. "I know you won't." That night, after he left, Angela sat by her window, staring at the stars. For the first time in years, her heart felt still. Not the emptiness of wealth, but the peace of connection. She realized something profound. Love wasn't always about romance. Sometimes it was about trust, forgiveness, believing in someone enough to give them the wings they once lost. And for the first time in her life, Angela wasn't just the billionaire who built empires. She was the woman learning to build hearts. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something she never thought she'd find. A love born not of attraction, but of grace. And in that quiet night, Lagos seemed to whisper back her truth. Forgiveness is the language of new love. Months passed, and Lagos began to whisper a new story, one that even money couldn't buy. Angela and Michael's partnership had blossomed into something far beyond business. Together, they launched Sentinel Security Systems, a company that quickly became the talk of the city. But what caught people's attention wasn't just the success, it was the humility behind it. The once proud billionaire and the former gatekeeper now stood side by side, proving that respect could rewrite any story. Angela had changed. She no longer measured worth by wealth. She listened more, smiled more, and worked with a heart full of gratitude. Her employees noticed. Even the cold marble of her mansion seemed warmer now, filled with laughter and life. One Saturday morning, she and Michael attended their company's first charity outreach in Agege, a project to help young graduates gain skills in private security. As they handed certificates to eager youths, the crowd cheered, but Angela only had eyes for one person. Michael stood by the stage, humble and proud, speaking passionately about second chances. His voice was steady, but filled with quiet emotion. When life closes doors, he said, sometimes it's just guiding you to knock elsewhere. And when someone believes in you, hold on to that. Angela felt her chest tighten. The crowd clapped, but she couldn't move. In that moment, she knew she had fallen completely in love with him. That evening, they returned to her home, quiet and thoughtful. The sunset painted the sky orange over Lecky, and a soft wind rustled through the trees. They sat by the balcony, sipping tea, their silence speaking louder than words. "You've changed me, Michael," she said softly. "You showed me what real strength looks like." He smiled, glancing at her. "And you showed me what faith looks like." Angela chuckled lightly. "Faith? I almost ruined everything before I found it." "But you found it," he said simply, "and that's what matters." Their eyes met, and the world seemed to still. No noise, no wealth, no distance, just two hearts finally seeing each other for who they really were. Then Michael reached into his pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out a small, simple box. Angela blinked, unsure. "Angela," he said, his voice calm but tender. "I've thought about this for a long time. I'm not offering you diamonds or wealth. You already have all that. What I have is something smaller but deeper." He opened the box. Inside was a modest silver ring, simple, elegant, and pure. Next to it lay a folded note. She looked at him, speechless. "Michael," he smiled faintly, "this ring belonged to my late mother. And this letter, she wrote it before she passed. It says, 'One day you'll meet a woman who sees beyond your uniform. When you do, never let her go.'" Tears rolled down Angela's cheeks. Her hands shook as he gently slipped the ring onto her finger. "I love you, Angela," he whispered. "Not for your name or your wealth or what you can give me, but for the woman who found grace in a man the world overlooked." Angela covered her mouth, her heart breaking open in the best way. "I love you too, Michael, more than I ever thought I could love anyone." The night wind carried their laughter across the estate. Somewhere beyond the city lights, Lagos seemed to hum in approval. For the first time, Angela felt truly at home, not in her mansion, not in her success, but in the presence of a man who made her feel human again. And as they held each other under the glowing moon, she whispered to herself, This is what it means to be rich." Because the heart, when it finally finds its home, becomes the greatest treasure of all. The morning sun rose softly over Lagos, spilling golden light across the mansion that had once felt so cold. But this morning, it was different. The sound of laughter echoed through the halls. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, and soft music played from the living room. Angela stood by her mirror, adjusting a simple white gown. No diamonds, no designer logo, just pure grace. Today wasn't about wealth or image, it was about love. Downstairs, the garden was transformed into a small paradise. White chairs lined the aisle, decorated with fresh hibiscus and lilies. Family, friends, and staff gathered quietly, smiling as they whispered about the miracle of what was about to happen. Michael stood under a small floral arch, dressed in a neat, cream-colored suit. His expression was calm, but his eyes shone with quiet emotion. When Angela appeared at the top of the steps, every sound seemed to fade. She wasn't the billionaire CEO the city knew. She was just a woman in love. Their eyes met, and she smiled, warm, genuine, unguarded. Each step she took down the aisle felt like shedding a layer of her old self. By the time she reached him, she wasn't the same Angela who once looked down on a man in uniform. She was the Angela who had learned to look within. The officiant began. The ceremony was short, but every word carried weight. When it was time for vows, Michael spoke first. "Angela, I met you at your gate, standing tall, powerful, untouchable. I never thought you'd see me. But you did. You saw me when it mattered most. You taught me that love isn't about position, it's about purpose. And I promise to stand with you, always, in strength and in silence." Angela's eyes glistened as she held his hands. "Michael, you taught me what true wealth is. It's not in buildings or accounts, it's in kindness, faith, and second chances. You didn't just guard my home, you guarded my heart. And now, I belong to you, not as your boss, but as your partner, your equal, your forever." Tears rolled down her cheeks as the guests clapped softly. When they exchanged rings, the sky itself seemed to bless them. A soft breeze brushed through the flowers, carrying whispers of joy. After the ceremony, the garden filled with music and laughter. Angela's mother, once cold and judgmental, approached Michael with moist eyes. "You've proven me wrong," she said quietly, "and I've never been happier to be wrong." Michael smiled gently. "Thank you, Ma." Angela watched the two of them hug, her heart swelling. It wasn't just her story that had changed. It was her family's too. Weeks later, Angela launched a new foundation in honor of Michael's journey. The Sentinel Scholarship Fund, providing education and job opportunities for struggling graduates across Nigeria. "No dream should die because of lack of opportunity," she said at the press launch, her hand intertwined with Michael's. The media captured it all. The billionaire who married her security man and turned her love story into a movement. But for Angela, it wasn't about headlines anymore. It was about healing. That evening, after the last guest had gone, she walked out to the gate, the same gate where it had all begun. Michael followed quietly, slipping his hand into hers. She smiled as they stood side by side. "Do you remember the first day you worked here?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "How could I forget? You didn't even look at me." Angela laughed through her tears. "And now, I can't stop looking at you." They stood there, watching the sun dip below the Lagos horizon, hand in hand. The woman who once guarded her heart now opened it freely. The billionaire who once looked down now bowed her head in gratitude. And in that quiet moment, with the hum of the city in the distance, Angela whispered, "I finally believe in love." Because sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't in what you own. It's in who you grow brave enough to love. In the end, Angela Roberts learned that love isn't found in luxury, it's found in loyalty. The woman who once looked down from her mansion now walks beside the man who once stood at her gate. Together, they built something money could never buy: trust, respect, and a home filled with laughter. Lagos still moves fast. The world still chases wealth. But inside that mansion, where pride once lived, love now reigns. Because sometimes, the greatest story isn't about what you built with money, it's about who stood with you when all you had was faith. What does true love mean for you? If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification button so you never miss out on our latest intriguing stories. Thanks for watching.